Los Angeles, 1992. St. Vincent Medical Center. Cameras rolling, crew watching. Michael Jackson sits beside an elderly woman's hospital bed, holding her weathered hands. Her name is Rosa Martinez, 73 years old, stage 4 liver failure, 3 weeks to live without a transplant she can't afford. This moment looks like every other celebrity hospital visit. Famous person brings comfort. Cameras capture inspiration. Everyone goes home feeling good. But what the cameras don't catch is the conversation happening in Spanish, whispered low enough that only Rosa hears it. Michael asks her 3 questions. What's your daughter's name? Does she know I'm here? What would you tell her if you had more time? Rosa's daughter Carmen couldn't afford the $400,000 transplant. She'd written Michael a desperate letter 2 weeks earlier, never expecting a response. Now he's here, but he's not here for the cameras. After the crew leaves, Michael stays. He pulls out a plain white piece of paper and writes something by hand. "You're getting the surgery," he says quietly. "But I need one thing from you in return." Rosa nods. The note stays folded in her hand. What Michael asked for would stay secret for 17 years. By late 1991, Michael Jackson was worth over $100 million, peak dangerous era, stadiums sold out worldwide, tabloids tracking his every move. The world saw Neverland Ranch, the eccentric costumes, the oxygen chamber rumors. What they didn't see was the private phone line in his bedroom that rang at odd hours. Mothers, fathers, hospital social workers with desperate voices. Michael answered personally. No publicist, no manager, no PR team involved. The system started in 1987 after a letter reached him from Detroit. A father whose son needed a kidney transplant. Insurance wouldn't cover it. Michael wired the money anonymously through a foundation he controlled. He included one handwritten note with a single condition. Never tell the press. Never use my name. Never make me the story. Charity with cameras isn't charity, he told his accountant later. It's PR. The routine became ritual. Calls came in, Michael asked questions, checks went out, notes followed. Silence protected everyone. Carmen Rodriguez wasn't supposed to exist in Michael's system. She was a single mother, worked double shifts as a home health aide in North Philadelphia, barely keeping rent paid. When Maria collapsed at school in November 1991, the diagnosis came fast. Acute lymphoblastic leukemia, aggressive, bone marrow transplant required within 6 months or she wouldn't make it to 9. The cost was brutal. $380,000. Insurance covered $130,000. The gap was a canyon Carmen couldn't cross. She applied for grants, called charities, started a GoFundMe before GoFundMe existed. Church fundraisers, bake sales, everything. Nothing came close. A hospital social worker named Patricia Chen pulled Carmen aside one afternoon in December. Patricia slipped her a business card with a phone number handwritten on the back. No name, no logo. "He's helped before," Patricia said quietly, "but you can't tell anyone, ever. If you mention his name, he'll disappear and your daughter won't get help. Do you understand?" Carmen nodded. She had no choice. Carmen dialed the number that night after Maria fell asleep. Her hand shook so hard she misdialed twice. When the line connected, she expected voicemail, maybe a secretary. Michael Jackson answered on the second ring. His voice was softer than she expected, almost careful. "Tell me her name first," he said, "then the number." Carmen stammered through it. Maria Rodriguez, 8 years old, acute lymphoblastic leukemia, Children's Hospital, Philadelphia. Then Michael asked 2 more questions. "What's the doctor's name? Does Maria know who I am?" Carmen lied on the second question, said Maria had never heard of him. Truth was, Maria had a Thriller poster above her bed, knew every word to Billie Jean. But Carmen sensed something in Michael's voice. He didn't want to be known, didn't want to be the famous one saving the day. He wanted to be invisible. His condition came fast, no negotiation. "I'll pay everything, but you never speak my name in connection to this. Not to the hospital staff, not to family, not to anyone. This stays between you and me. Do you understand?" Carmen said yes. Michael hung up. 36 hours later, a certified check for $250,000 arrived by courier. Attached with a paperclip was a handwritten note on plain white paper. "She lives. That's the only story. MJ." Surgery was scheduled for January. Maria survived. By early 1992, a Los Angeles journalist named Tracy Mills started noticing a pattern. She covered celebrity philanthropy, wrote puff pieces about charity galas and foundation launches, but she kept hearing whispers about anonymous six-figure donations to children's hospitals: Detroit, Philadelphia, Chicago, Houston. 12 families over 5 years, all with similar stories. Desperate situation, mysterious business card, phone call with someone famous. Check arrives, child gets treatment. Each family signed a non-disclosure agreement. Each received a handwritten note. Tracy tracked the money through incorporation filings and found the connection. All payments routed through Michael Jackson's personal accountant, a man named Leonard Rowe, who'd worked for Michael since the Victory Tour. Tracy reached out to 3 families. 2 refused to talk. The third, a mother in Detroit, confirmed Michael paid for her son's kidney transplant in 1989, but wouldn't say more. "He asked for one thing," the woman said, "and I'm keeping that promise." Tracy filed the information away, kept digging. The story felt big, but without cooperation, it was just smoke. She didn't know Carmen Rodriguez existed yet. That would come later. 2 years after Maria's surgery, Carmen Rodriguez was drowning again. The medical debt was cleared. Michael's check covered everything, but Carmen lost her job during Maria's 6-month recovery. She couldn't work double shifts anymore, couldn't leave Maria alone. She found part-time work cleaning offices at night, but the rent in North Philadelphia kept climbing. By late 1992, Carmen was 3 months behind, eviction notice taped to her door. Maria was healthy now, back in school, laughing again. But Carmen couldn't keep the lights on. That's when the tabloid called. A reporter from the National Enquirer said they were investigating Michael Jackson's secret charity network and heard Carmen's name from a source at Children's Hospital Philadelphia. They offered $15,000 for an interview, on the record, with photos, full story. Carmen's hands shook when she heard the number. $15,000 would cover rent for a year, maybe longer. She remembered the promise she made to Michael, the condition he'd given her. Never speak my name in connection to this. But Maria needed a home. Carmen made the call. She said yes. The article ran in January 1993, 6 pages, full-color photos of Carmen and Maria in their small apartment. The headline twisted everything. Michael Jackson's secret payments. What was he really buying? The reporter framed the story around control and manipulation. Why would Michael demand silence unless he had something to hide? Carmen's quotes were accurate but stripped of context. "He made me promise to disappear," she said, which was true. Michael had asked her never to speak his name publicly. But the article framed it as sinister, not protective. The truth, that Michael simply wanted privacy for the families he helped, was buried in paragraph 19. Easy to miss. The story implied Michael was buying silence to cover up something darker, that the payments were part of a pattern of inappropriate behavior. Within 48 hours, 3 more families came forward, each with similar stories. The tabloids ran follow-ups. Michael's legal team issued a statement. Mr. Jackson's private charitable efforts are exactly that, private. He requests anonymity to protect the families, not himself. But the damage was done. The story became national news, picked up by legitimate outlets, debated on talk shows. And Michael, reading the coverage in his Neverland library, didn't call his lawyers to sue. He told his assistant, "She needed the money, I understand." But Michael changed the system. No more phone calls, no more personal involvement, no more handwritten notes. He set up a new structure. Payments would go directly through hospitals, handled by administrators. No family contact. The foundation would cover bills anonymously, and families would never know where the money came from. It was safer, cleaner, more distant. But it also meant Michael couldn't ask his 3 questions anymore. Couldn't hear the mother's voice. Couldn't know if the child had heard of him. The personal connection was gone. His accountant Leonard tried to argue for keeping the old system, said the families appreciated Michael's direct involvement. Michael shook his head. "The moment it's public, it stops being about saving a life," he said. "It becomes a transaction. I won't let that happen again." 3 months later, in August 1993, FBI agents arrived at Neverland Ranch with a search warrant. The raid wasn't related to charity, unrelated allegations, different investigation entirely. But agents photographed everything, catalogued every piece of paper, every file, every drawer. That's when Michael's publicist, Bob Jones, found the manila envelope tucked behind framed gold records in Michael's private office. The envelope was labeled in Michael's handwriting, "Promises Kept." Inside, 47 hospital receipts spanning 6 years, anonymous donation records, payment confirmations, and attached to each receipt, a handwritten note on plain white paper. The FBI attorney handling the material was a woman named Sandra Morrison. She held up the envelope, flipped through the receipts, read the notes. Each one identical in structure. "She lived, you owe me nothing, MJ." Or, "He survived, that's what matters, MJ." Sandra asked Bob Jones the question that changed the whole investigation. Why would Michael Jackson hide charity? Why keep this secret? Bob didn't have an answer. To him, the notes looked like proof of generosity, evidence that Michael had quietly helped dozens of families over the years without seeking credit. But to Sandra, trained to look for patterns of behavior, the secrecy raised questions. Why demand silence? Why insist on anonymity? What was Michael protecting? The receipts were logged as evidence, photographed, catalogued. One receipt was circled in red ink. $247,000, Children's Hospital, Philadelphia, January 1992. The name attached, Carmen Rodriguez. Sandra recognized it immediately from the tabloid article that had run 8 months earlier. She called the Los Angeles field office, requested they pull the original Inquirer piece. When she read it, she saw the disconnect. The tabloid framed Michael's payments as suspicious, but the receipts showed straightforward charitable transactions with no strings attached beyond the request for privacy. Sandra drafted a memo. Subject maintains documentation of anonymous charitable payments. No evidence of impropriety. Notes appear to be personal records, not contracts. The envelope was returned to Michael's legal team 6 months later. But the tabloid story resurfaced during the investigation. Media outlets revisited Carmen Rodriguez's interview, asked why Michael had demanded silence if he had nothing to hide. Carmen received a subpoena in September 1993, was asked to testify about the payment, the phone call, the note. She sat in a conference room in downtown Philadelphia with 2 FBI agents and a court stenographer. They asked her to describe the interaction with Michael, to explain his condition, to clarify what he'd asked for in exchange for the money. Carmen told the truth. Michael asked for nothing except privacy. He didn't want his name used, didn't want publicity, didn't want the story to become about him instead of Maria's recovery. One agent asked, "Did he ever contact you again after the payment?" Carmen said no. "Did he ever ask you to do anything beyond keeping his name private?" No. "Did he ever threaten you or your daughter?" Absolutely not. The agents thanked her, closed the file. But Carmen left that room with a weight she couldn't shake. She realized what she'd done. Her $15,000 interview had made Michael look controlling when all he wanted was to protect her family from media harassment. He asked for nothing except to not be the story, she told her sister that night. And I made him the story. The FBI investigation eventually uncovered 19 families total. $4.2 million in payments between 1987 and 1993. Detroit, Philadelphia, Chicago, Houston, Atlanta, Los Angeles. Every family told the same story. Michael answered the phone personally, asked about the child, covered the medical costs, requested silence. Not one family reported manipulation, threats, or demands beyond the privacy request. The common thread? Michael asked about the child first, the money second. One mother from Chicago told investigators, "He asked if my son liked music. We talked for 20 minutes about what songs made my son happy. He never mentioned the payment amount. The check just arrived." Another father from Houston said Michael called him back 3 times during his daughter's recovery, asked how she was doing, if the treatment was working, if the family needed anything else. He remembered her name every time, the father said, never mentioned his own. The FBI's final report on the charity payments concluded there was no evidence of wrongdoing, no pattern of inappropriate behavior, no legal violations. The payments were exactly what they appeared to be: private charitable acts with a single condition: don't make it public. But by then, the damage to Michael's reputation was done. The tabloid narrative had taken root. Even families who'd kept the promise and stayed silent wondered if they'd been part of something darker. The real condition wasn't control. It was protection. Michael understood something most celebrities didn't. The moment a charitable act becomes public, the family loses privacy forever. Reporters show up, cameras follow the child to school, strangers ask invasive questions. The family becomes the one Michael Jackson saved, and that identity swallows everything else. Michael had seen it happen before, early in his solo career, when he donated publicly to a children's hospital in Los Angeles. Within weeks, the families were doing talk show circuits, the children's medical histories became public knowledge, and the story became about Michael's generosity instead of the kids' survival. He hated it. So when he started the private payment system in 1987, he made the rule clear. If the press knows I paid, they'll harass you. They'll make it about me. I can't let that happen to your family. The handwritten notes weren't contracts or proof of agreements. They were receipts, acknowledgements that the payment was made and the condition was understood. Michael kept them in the envelope labeled "Promises Kept," because to him, that's what they represented. Families who kept the promise of silence. Children who got to live normal lives without being defined by their medical crises or by the famous person who'd helped them. The philosophy was simple, almost monastic. The moment it's public, it stops being about saving a life. It becomes a transaction, a headline, a story. And I won't be part. The system collapsed after Carmen's article. Michael stopped all anonymous payments through the foundation, shifted to a hospital direct model where families never knew the source. It was cleaner, safer, but it also removed the human connection Michael had valued. No more phone calls, no more questions about the child, no more handwritten notes. Just wire transfers and administrative paperwork. The families who'd kept silence remained protected, never publicly identified, never harassed by media. But Carmen's $15,000 covered 3 months of rent, then vanished. She found steady work eventually, kept Maria in school, rebuilt stability. But the guilt stayed. Michael's reputation took hits from multiple directions. The charity story became one piece of a larger narrative about secrecy and control. Later families who needed help had to seek it elsewhere. Some succeeded through other foundations, hospital fundraising, community support. Some didn't. The ripple effect was impossible to measure. How many children didn't get the call because Michael had pulled back? How many families kept drowning because the system that had saved 19 others no longer existed? There's no way to know. Money can solve one crisis, but it can't immunize against consequence. Michael's instinct to protect privacy was right, but the world doesn't reward silence. Transparency gets weaponized, secrecy gets misread. In the end, neither approach guarantees safety. 16 years later, June 2009, Carmen Rodriguez found the original note while cleaning out a drawer. Plain white paper, slightly yellowed, Michael's handwriting in black ink. She lives. That's the only story. MJ. Maria was 26 now, healthy, finishing nursing school at Temple University. She'd never known Michael Jackson paid for her transplant. Carmen had kept that secret even after breaking the original promise. When Michael died that summer, Carmen watched the news coverage, the tributes, the controversies, the complicated legacy dissected by commentators who'd never spoken to him. She held the note in her hand and cried. Not for Michael, though she felt sorrow for him. She cried because she finally understood what the note meant. Silence wasn't control. It was Michael removing himself from the miracle. He didn't want credit, didn't want Maria growing up as the girl Michael Jackson saved. He wanted Maria to just be Maria, a kid who survived cancer, who got a second chance, whose story belonged to her alone. The $15,000 Carmen earned from the tabloid was long gone. But the note remained. Carmen never told Maria about the payment, never explained where the transplant money came from. She honored the original promise too late, but she honored it. The note that could have stayed private became the only proof of the one thing Michael never wanted: credit. Legends grow in silence. They collapse under attention.